When a cycle of civilization is reaching its end, it is difficult to achieve anything by resisting it and by directly opposing the forces in motion. The current is too strong. One would be overwhelmed. The essential thing is not to let oneself be impressed by the omnipotence and apparent triumph of the forces of the epoch. These forces, devoid of connection with any higher principle, are in fact on a short chain. One should not become fixated on the present and on things at hand, but keep in view the conditions that may come about in the future. Thus, the principle to follow could be that of letting the forces and processes of this epoch take their own course, while keeping oneself firm and ready to intervene when the tiger, which cannot leap on the person riding it, is tired of running. Julius Evola. Ride the Tiger, a survival manual for the aristocrats of the soul.
All right, so tonight's show is about aristocrats of the soul and how they're not. And how that's not really a thing. But it's just something that comes up over and over again. And I saw an influencer who's really young and really smart put out a big promo about Evola. And as a man, again, because I remember back in maybe like 2012, 2014, everyone in the alt-right was reading Julius Evola, and it was like this new edgy thing that everybody had to get into. And, all this radical traditionalism and all these things that were really around before that. But there was a really renewed interest in that. I've seen it come around again 3 or 4 times since then. And it just gives a whole new generation of young men thinking that they live in a fallen age. And that's the nit I have to pick. I think it's the saying with it is the idea that we're living in a fallen age is actually a terrible perspective and completely unhelpful. And I think it's a completely unproductive way to look at life. And it's just a story. For those of you who are watching along and maybe saw earlier or follow my Substack, I spent the last 3 days putting together a little Substack on this. And there are so many ages they could be. I mean, like, what was the fall? Like Atlantis. Okay, Atlantis. When did that fall? Okay, apparently that civilization rose and fell. Rome. All these civilizations have risen and fallen. And if you take especially a mythology that was from a different civilization, like, okay, well, that's Vedic time or Hindu time, and then you apply it to a totally different situation. I mean, obviously the Aztecs already had their apocalypse. Like, they're already over. Like the same thing, you find the same thing in the Old Norse literature, like an age of like wolves and when, and so forth. And that's going to come, and that's when we'll know it's Ragnarok, and it's a big apocalyptic thing. All civilizations seem to have this idea of the great end. And taking them and applying them to the age we're in is just this convenient way of saying that everything is bad and it will never get better. And therefore, I don't have to do anything. And there are some people, I had an argument with Brock about this because it insisted that Oswald Spengler gave like concrete actions that you could take, but I was trying to lump him in the same category. And I think functionally he is, because everyone who reads Decline of the West is like, it just becomes more of a slogan. Like, oh, the West is declining. And it's not like, oh, we have to do what Oswald Spengler said. No one really knows. I mean, nobody makes it to the end of the book. It's 3/4 of it. There's huge sections on math. Nobody's reading it for that. I mean, I read a good bit of it, back in the day when I was a young edgelord. And it's just not the idea that we're in a wolfman. I know who that is. Howdy, sir. The idea that we're in a fallen age is so unhelpful. It's so unhelpful, and it's such a terrible way to look in the world. And yeah, as I say in my essay that I wrote, which is linked, I pinned the link. Entire men have built cities during this time that's supposed to be in the Kali Yuga. Dynasties have been founded and risen and fall. People have created men, whether you believe people went to the moon or not, like men went to the moon, they went to outer space. All kinds of amazing things have happened. But there's this fantasy of I'm special and I believe the world should be different. And therefore I have this belief, and that makes me better than other people.
Yeah.
And that's what really digs into. So I don't know, you want to take it from there?
Well, first of all, I cannot stop smiling at that AI intro, the animation. I particularly love the tiger on that's not going anywhere. You know, that's it's very symbolically done. Yeah,
I think I had that image in my mind years ago, but I had no way to generate it.
Yeah. I occasionally, back when I was working on commercial sites instead of more residential service type stuff, I would always run into some old curmudgeonly journeyman or master who was absolutely convinced that society was on the decline, and that we're moral degeneration, we don't believe in objective morality anymore. And I could usually always get them to smirk a little bit in a self-aware kind of way when I'd bring up, there's this book from 2,800 years ago of older men saying the same thing about younger men. And of course, we're talking about the Iliad and Nestor berating Agamemnon and Achilles, two of the most famous warriors in all of history. Achilles, arguably the greatest warrior in all of history, being told by an older man, "You're nothing like the warriors of my generation." like the irony there should be at the hearer's expense as well as at Nestor's expense if the hearer is thinking the same thoughts. Like, either we've been on a 2,800 year consistent decline, in which case, like, what are we measuring ourselves against here? Or there is a psychological bias at work persistently across time. And on my introduction to a deeper analysis of the Golden Age myth, which has a variety of different versions. There's the Hindu version that, of course, Evola is invoking. There's the more modern socio-sciencey sounding Strauss-Howe theory. But perhaps the most classic one is the Golden Age myth, which comes from Hesiod and his Works and Days. And it was Greg Nage, actually, who I won't try to find it right now, but who does an analysis of the ages of man, the Golden Age, and then the Silver Age, and then the Bronze Age, and the Iron Age, and the Nameless Age. Nameless and Iron are switched. And what he discovers is that these are all positive and negative attributes of the cult heroes and the hero cults. In other words, we have the positive aspects of heroes. They walk with the gods. They are noble, beautiful beings that are contemplative and interesting. The Bronze Age represents their violence and their anger and their hubris. The Silver Age represents pious cult participants, people who pay homage to the gods and heroes and revere them and look up to them and maintain society. And then the Nameless Age, or the Iron Age, I'm getting it mixed up, is the inverse. It's the impious. It's the forgetful. It's the degenerates who just do whatever regardless of order. And what Greg Nage points out is he is capturing all of the different elements of every generation. It's not actually a sequence across time. It might be a sequence across an individual's lives, but there are actually characters who fit each of these descriptions in every generation. Every age is the Golden Age. Every age is the Silver Age. Every age is the Iron Age, the Bronze Age, and the Nameless Age. And the cycle is a continuous one in the present, not something you have to wait for. So the question is really, which one do you want to participate in? Which one do you want to be a part of? And the desire to step out of it all, to be outside of this thing, is really a desire to escape human existence. I mean, presumably we want to be in the golden age, but to put it in terms of a cycle means the golden will flow into these other phases too. So there's this like longing for nirvana, or kind of Gnostic desire to escape the material confines of this whole thing. But the other thing that stuck out to me as because it's been many years since I've read Ride the Tiger, but from this quote is, he seems to ground the idea of a legitimate social order in being founded upon transcendent principles from above. And it made me wonder, like, what would it look like to have a society that is not run on transcendent principles? Like, how is that even possible? We can surely point to things that are going on in our current society saying, well, this is certainly wrong, but it's present and it's viable in a sense because it is holding to different principles. A democratic consensus principle, for example, which exists even in totalitarian societies. Like, the tyrant has to at least worry about democratic power, so to speak. So Nietzsche famously wrote, like, very disparagingly of the utilitarians and the English psychologists, he said, who were like, morality is about the good of the species as a whole. Nietzsche's like, I don't think it's possible for people who've survived 500 generations to still maintain features that are bad for the species as a whole. Like, it's just a matter of context, right? It's just a matter of context of which of those features are going to be most useful for the species. But violent instincts aren't inherently bad for the species. They preserve us, morality. He thought it was very silly that people equated morality with that. And I think in the same way, we can look at this romantic idea of a social order grounded on transcendent principles and be like, well, I can look in nature and I can find all different ways of organizing different species and tribes and troops and colonies and so forth. And I don't see any structure of human civilization that like violates those. We can point to certain beliefs that we think are more at odds with them than others, and that's part of what we do, and say what are the gods, the common things here. But like, it's the way he's framing tradition. There's epistemic questions in the way he's assuming that, like, nothing, because he's not even talking about like the last 20 years. He was writing this back in the 40s or the 30s or something.
Yeah, basically, he just to put it in time, is that well, for people who maybe haven't read it, or people who did, it doesn't matter. But he was kind of an art nerd, occultist. And I, as I was reading his biography, I liked it a little bit better because I'm like, oh, I am this guy in some ways, But he was involved in the Dada movement, which is kind of an absurdist. Basically, it's basically the absurdist art movement in Italy, and that was kind of his early. That's where he got the name the Baron. He actually he gets a lot of slack because people call him the Baron, but he never called himself the Baron except for as kind of a joke. But that was something they did in artistic circles of like giving themselves like royal styles, and it just kind of stuck. So people called him the Baron Evola, but he was not a noble. He was not actually an aristocrat. I think that criticism of him for many years, but that's not actually accurate. And then he started writing about these transcendent principles and things like that, and he got involved in Hermeticism, which is kind of perennialism. It's kind of like secret teachings of all ages, like all the things that run together. that are the same across time. And, we deal with some of that kind of stuff, not Hermeticism specifically, but we deal with that a little bit in the Order of Fire, but from a broader perspective, I think, in more of like Joseph Campbell kind of way. But he was talking about this and so forth. That he served in World War One, I believe, and so he did see a little bit of battle, I think, and then he got involved with Nietzsche. Sorry, that might be a Freudian slip. With Mussolini's fascist movement. So, and I researched that a little bit because I wanted to see where he fit into that. And he had Mussolini's ear. If Hitler had Himmler, Evola was like Himmler, but without really any power. He never had any power. He just had he had some crazy ideas, and Mussolini was like, oh, that's kind of cool. That works for like our vision for Italy. But then other things, Mussolini was also a realist. If you really read, I did read Mussolini's biography many years ago, and he was a newspaperman first, and he was very pragmatic. And he wanted to, and so that's why fascism kind of doesn't really have a definition for something like that, because Mussolini was like, whatever gets me into power and gets the fascists in power, and obviously it was a reaction to communism. So Mussolini was a very practical guy, and actually, what I think a lot of people like about Evola, and why I think other people might like Evola who like us, was that he wanted a pagan Italy. He wanted to bring back pagan Italy, and which is kind of awesome. I mean, it would be a good place to bring back paganism, except for it's also the place where the Catholic Church is founded. And Mussolini was like, yeah, that's not going to we kind of need, and again, and that's the problem with a lot of these characters, is that they aren't good at dealing with like reality on the ground. Like, what is my ideal world that I want to create? Blah 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 blah. And Mussolini's looking at this I need Catholic power. Yeah. I need papal power. Obviously, if I'm going to run Italy, that just makes sense. And so and so he's kind of like, that's nice, Evola. And then he took some of the other ideas and ran with them. And then I think, obviously, Evola, then you have a guy who's associated with the fascist party, had a lot of, he never specifically joined, to make that clear, but he had a lot of grand ideas. And a lot of these books were written many years after all of that fell apart. And of course, terrible things happened to Mussolini, which is the fate of tyrants. If you've ever seen his hanging body, it's kind of what I think should happen sometimes. You take a dude out of the crowd and beat the shit out of him until he's dead. But we did not like this rule. Anyway, so you're talking about basically a disappointed fascist is writing these books about how it's all lost. It's all going to hell. It will always be in a bad place. You can't support anything that's good because it's just going to collapse anyway. And he's pretty explicit about that. I read the first 2 chapters of Writing Tiger again, and he is pretty explicit about don't even support things that you think are good because they're bad too. It's like they're poisoned.
That's the old order are still there in the artifacts of it.
But the old order that he's talking about remnants of tradition.
He's talking about the seeds of the present order that he wants to revolt against, the modern world he wants to revolt
against. The way he phrases it, at least in his translation, is that everything's attached to the bourgeois. Everything is bourgeois life, which is materialist and so forth. And he's all about transcendent principles and so forth that are from a higher thing. And the thing, it would be interesting to see where he thinks those actually come from. Right. It's not, if you want paganism, who is your god? It's just an interesting thing. But before we should jump into that, because I know you have some crossover.
There was some
contemporary crossover, but
there were some good comments because Stefanio Mitrofon says, I salute you with respect. I read Evola, but I never saw him as negative. I thought always that he recommended a heroic revival, just as the old Romans did in ancient times with the Prussians recently. Now, like, he is invoking a kind of heroic spirit. He is invoking a heroic spirit. Absolutely. And I think one of the things that's so appealing about Evola to young men, and this is to their credit, I think, is that, like, as we have seen in the last few decades and in the last week in particular, our culture has become quite fond of iconoclasm and bringing down heroes and attempting to deface them. And so when someone speaks in the opposite direction, it's like naturally very appealing, right, to do this. But the reason that we were particularly interested in talking about Evola today, aside from it just being kind of an old familiar acquaintance in in certain circles and seeing it resurge, is that over time you see not just the ideas but the effects that these ideas have. And things that are very positive on paper and seem very positive on paper can have very negative effects. And I mean, this is like what we've seen with Marxism. If you read, screw the Communist Manifesto, screw Das Kapital, if you read Marx's contribution to the critique of Hegel's philosophy of right, that's a very good, very positive paper. It's a very good piece of writing, and it's very inspiring. But we know a little bit more now about where that road leads than we did at the time. And so I think there is something to be said for not holding people who were taken in by that too, not criticizing them too harshly, but but we do have to be a little bit firmer on people once we have seen where those lead. And it's there's, I think, some intellectual resistance by a certain kind of idealistic thinker to judging ideas on their effects. Something feels intellectually illegitimate about that. But why should it? Because much of the criticism that we hear from people like Evola and Marx, for that matter, and Nietzsche and many other thinkers, are the state of affairs that we're experiencing, the effects of previous ideas. That's mostly what this great debate across the millennia is. And what was particularly inspiring was the combination of Jack noticing, Evola popping up again in certain circles, and me being reminded of Vox Day and his description of the secret king. This is an idea he observed in his Vox Day. For those of you who aren't aware, he's a fairly infamous Christian blogger who gave us the like alpha, beta, delta, sigma sociosexual hierarchy, which every internet version of it is a bastardized version of what he put together. But the one that intrigued him the most was the gamma personality, who is a basically raisonnement personified in the modern age. He's this usually more intelligent than average, usually a little bit overweight, usually a subject matter expert of some sort, especially in tech, but not always, and hates alphas with the passion of 1,000 suns. These are generally left-wing, and they have this sense, this revenge of the nerd sense, that they are better than what society credits them for being. And so the novels, because they're often very literate and involved in fantasy and stuff, that flatter the gamma male personality feature what Vox Day calls the secret king archetype. Think of like Aragorn, but worse. Someone who is secretly a king or a noble, but which the world is like too corrupt to recognize, as really better than all of these hyper masculine, brainless, people who are actually in charge. And so the secret king archetype, as a flattery to the vanity of the reader who is not in charge of things, is a feature that extends far beyond just the people that Evola appears to be speaking to as aristocrats of the soul, but it's the same mechanism. It's flattery of imagined self-image that's divorced from reality. And again, this comes back to the epistemic question of like, where do we get these ideas about what is good and what is transcendent from? Is it just logic or is it experience? So that's the connection for between Vox Day and the Secret King and Evola, and the concern we have, because these positive things, it is good to aspire to be a king, but if you're being flattered into thinking you deserve to be a king and you shouldn't change because you're the kingly as you are, but the world is too corrupt, that discourages you from improving. And then Brock had mentioned that he's currently reading Evola's first book, The Mysteries of the Grail. I've talked to a lot of people who have read Evola's Metaphysics of War and the mountain climbing one, I forget, Mysteries of the Grail. And it does give me the impression that, and I think we have to say this, we have to admit this in our own circle, regarding Nietzsche, sometimes the writer is a lot cooler than their fans. And Evola might be a little bit taken down a few notches below where he actually deserves to be by how his fans take away. And we all know certain kind of Nietzsche fans that make Nietzsche look far worse than he actually is, the edgy teenagers and so forth. But
yeah, but I don't know. I think that
you've also read a lot more Evola than me.
he has a lot of very intellectual things as well. But they were like the radical traditionalists. I'm sure that probably all the guys who wrote the Tear Journal back then, the kind of resurgent pagan journals and so forth, were all very, very smart and very researched. But and there is a little bit of a thing there. Like, I'm smart. Why is the rest of the world so dumb? And why is I'm concerned with these interesting things? Why is the rest of the world so bad? But like I said in the piece that I wrote up, it is really easy to. This is the wrong way to say it, but it's really easy to glaze history, like, glaze an age of history, because all we have is like their propaganda. Like, especially when you go back to ancient Greece, ancient Rome, all these. I mean, we look at Vedic times, we barely know anything about them. We just have the Veda. You look at all these ancient civilizations that seem very like pious and pure and da 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 da, and like very looking for the gods for everything. And I'm like, well, you didn't hear about all the dirty shit that went on, because they don't write that down. We don't keep that. And the times when you do, I mean, there was a lot of dirty shit that went on. If you look at politics in ancient Rome, there was all kinds of like underhanded whatever things that went on. So, and I think that's always been true because in every age did they not have pirates and thieves? Did they not have swindlers and so forth? So these things have always existed, and it is our job, and that's my whole point. It is our job to, as men who are alive right now, it is our job to fight against that. And I don't mean like go to war against that. I mean like to make the world around you better, and to reject that, and to work to make things better. Like I said, 1% better, rather than saying it's not like it's not like I read about it was in some other age. Therefore, nothing is good. Everything is doomed. If someone said that makes a change that's positive, I'm going to not support it because it's just going to go bad anyway. It leads to this defeatism. So I'm skipping that one question about slow ideas because of the way it was phrased. But I put a link for it if it's actually sincere. But there was another quote here from one of our readers.
Evola said that the old Romans and Germans were similar heroic people, very related in spirit. For example, the saga of the honorable Scaevola was similar to German sagas. Italo-German alliance was good. Well, so the spirit of a people does not preclude intertribal conflict among the Germans or the Italians between the blacks and the whites in the freaking Machiavelli's age, or in my own ancestry, the Scots were quite fond of beating each other up, despite being similar in spirit. But yeah, like the idea of a spirit being in a people is an interesting hypothesis to hold at the same time as believing that we're in a dark age, you know, because that what happened to that spirit? Did it go away? Is it latent? Like, what would the expression of it look like relative to Jack, as you were saying, how you think things were in the past, when we have all kinds of documented cases of people in the past also decrying how far down things have fallen from their impression of the past. I actually found
one of my favorite examples. You can jump to that where you hold that thought. When you were bringing this up before about people complaining about the golden, ages, another example is in Japan. One of my favorite books that I looked at, the Hagakure, is basically an old samurai complaining about how samurais aren't any good anymore. It's cross-cultural. It's this thing that happens everywhere. So you have to take all that with a grain of salt. And when you speak about the spirit of the people, like say the German people or whatever, I mean that's a bit of a myth as well. Like which German people? Like Scandinavians or like Middle Germans or like the Swiss? There are all these different German nations that they tried to gather together in like the 19th century. But you got to remember, a lot of these countries in Europe weren't even countries. They were different, like warring kingdoms, and have been warring kingdoms for like centuries. And even back in the Roman times, Germania, with Tacitus, I believe, wrote about that. Tacitus, I don't think ever went to Germania. He just wrote about what he heard from other people. So it's like us listening to soldiers describe Afghanistan, and then writing a book about what Afghanistan is like. Which apparently, as far as from I've heard from soldiers, they don't have these toilets and they're all good. So it's, and then when you look at the Germanic myths, again, this is one of the reasons why we started the Order of Fire and perennialism and so forth, because you look at a lot of the Germanic myths and you're like, well, I don't know who actually believed that and at what time they believed it. The more you dig into the history, the less is there. They're all translations that Christians made of things that were oral traditions and so forth. So there's just not a lot there. So like when you look at spirits of the people in that way, I mean, I guess you would make the argument, and sorry, I went over where you were going to go, but you would make the argument maybe, or have heard the argument at least, about the way the language affects, brings out the spirit of the people or affects the way that they think and stuff like that. I mean, there are things, I mean, there's definitely things that Scandinavians have a way about them compared to Mediterraneans. Right. I mean, there is climate and all kinds of things that affect kind of the way that people are. But I think there was a lot of romanticism about the spirits of people and so forth in the 19th century, and that was really about a movement that created those nations, because they had to take Naples and Rome and all these cities that had been warring city-states for like say the Renaissance, and then turn them into Italy. And that this is one country. And the same thing happened with the Germans. Take all these different states and make them into one thing. And we see that even still today. It's like the lines on the map were drawn fairly recently. And so there was a lot of looking back towards romantic histories of the past that was really big in the late 19th and early 20th century. I'm sorry, I went on a tangent, but that's, I guess, what.
Oh no, it's good stuff, and all of this stuff ties together. And Stefanio has another comment about Evola offering a more active solution to in Men Among the Ruins, but like again, that presupposes that we're in this dark age, right? It presupposes that we are in a fallen state, and this is where again, the Naj interpretation of the meaning of the Golden Age in Hesiod, but again, this applies to Strauss-Howe, well, less so Strauss-Howe. It applies to the whole theology of cyclical generations of good and bad, Kali Yuga or Iron Age and so forth. And this is in paragraph 1231 in hour 12, because this whole book is available online for people who want to look it up. The whole chapter is on the expression of justice in hero cults. He says, not only are the end of generation 4, that's the Iron Generation, and the beginning of generation 1, that's the Golden Age, the same thing, we can also say that generation 1 and 2 are the same thing, which is the positive and negative sides of cult heroes, the people these cults are based around. And that generations 3 and 4 are the same thing as well, which is the negative and positive sides of epic heroes. We can say that generations... Oh, okay, so I misremembered it slightly. We can say that generations 1 and 2 are the same as generations 3 and 4, since epic heroes do become cult heroes at the end of 4 in the cyclical logic of 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, back to 1, and so on. And this cycle is the same as the present, which is the quintessential here and now. We see this kind of thinking in the myth-making traditions of other Indo-European languages, perhaps Sanskrit, as well in Celtic and Indic traditions. Oh, there it is. For example, the number of 5 following the sequence 1, 2, 3, 4 is a symbol of integration and centrality. So again, I strongly recommend people check out hour 12, or chapter 12 really, of Greg Naj's excellent book. But because this is not just about Hesiod again, it describes how we end up in the place of believing that we're in a dark age in the first place. Like how, like compared to what? And it's always in reference to a golden age that has been, that is arrived at poetically and mythologically. Like we conceptualize a golden age through the sieve of poetry in relation to myth. And oftentimes these myths are about periods of intense violence and darkness, like the Bronze Age collapse, right? And are sometimes written in those ages. But the elevation of the beautiful moments brings a light out of the darkness. And then we look back on it and we only see the light and not the darkness that was around it. And we imagine it was a golden age, when in fact it was just like every other age before it and every other age after. It is much closer to Nietzsche's myth of eternal return. And the question is, how do we see it?
Yeah. And I like to, this is where I pull out that factoid about the rooms of the Vatican that they had to close because there was so much fucking sin that happened there. That they closed the rooms for like 300 years after they, after which family was it? It's the one that I used the memes in the group.
The Medicis?
About that. Yeah, well, the Medicis, but yeah, I don't know if it was actually them, but yeah, basically, it was in that era, and yeah, they had so much sex, so many orgies in some of the rooms in the Vatican that they closed them for 300 years. So the idea that like fucked up shit wasn't going on at any point is a little. Now we can talk about the things that we don't like about the modern. I hate the separation of modern, because modern just means like right now, it means contemporary.
In the present, yeah.
Like again, that's setting up this like it's setting up a golden age versus now. And, whereas when people created modernity, that's a different discussion. We've talked about that before, and we probably should talk about it again. But because modern doesn't necessarily mean bad. So Evola is responsible really for getting this whole like reject the modern world. Well, what does that exactly mean? Like what
should we become
specific about what you don't like?
Post-modern?
Yeah, so exactly. Post-modern, or do you reject? It's like it's a meaning. It's also a meaningless thing to say because modern at that point, modern means whatever I don't like. And whatever I do like, I mean, you're writing on a phone, you're doing all this other stuff, and like whatever I do like is okay, but whatever I don't like is the evil of the modern world. So it becomes very this philosophy of convenience.
Well, and I think
it's,
Stefanio's next comment, it really gets to the heart of the matter and the heart of the distinction, because we can talk about the bad things that are happening, but the question is, okay, so what do you do? And that's like much of the complaints that I think our essential complaint and criticism of Evola is not even in his observation of there being problems. There are certainly problems, immigration being like one of them. There are many, many more. But what do you do about it? And the problem with Evola's solution is there is no allowance for incrementalism. There is no allowance for a shift in direction. It has to be a complete severance from the past. And people get taken in by that reasoning that we can't tolerate any amount of what is present in the current modern order, or else any victory will only be short term, and then all the bad stuff will be back again. And so you're basically stuck in either apathetic detachment from the world, which is not a path to power or success at a personal level, let alone a political level, or worse, into a logic of accelerationism, which says, well, let's push towards the end faster. And this is actually something Hesiod says in his Works and Days. It's like, I'm in the Iron Age. I wish I could speed it up so that I could get to the Golden Age, because there's an assumption about the way history works. When we presuppose this logic, it brings you to a place where you assume that if you can just make things worse faster, then you will bring about the good stuff by the magic of how history works. And this is actually used by Marxists who talk about accelerate the contradiction to advance the dialectic. Now, their dialectic is a dialectic materialism. It's the opposite of Hegel's or Evola's spiritual dialectic, where it's all about the transcendent and the spirit and so forth. But the logic of dialectic and there being a logical trajectory of history, whether you're Francis Fukuyama or Hegel or Evola, or Nick Land. Nick Land's another accelerationist. It has too many, there are too many factors to accurately predict, but also there's this problem that things don't have only one opposite. Things can have a plurality of opposites, which makes the idea of predicting a particular path impossible. Like the reason Antifa thinks everyone who isn't a communist is a fascist, so everyone's a fascist if they're not explicitly communist, that's based on this dialectic logic of history. In the end, things will either be communist or fascist or whatever. But like so much of the dialectical logic of opposition that is behind this, and things will either be transcendent and eternal and grounded in principles from above and so forth, or they will not. It's like, well, what if there are multiple transcendent principles that are sometimes in tension with each other? There's like a Euthyphro problem in our conceptualization of the structure of society. And it's just the logic of accelerationism, where it doesn't lead to just apathy and a sort of spiritually going limp, leads to actually cheering for destruction, which often accomplishes nothing other than pain and suffering. And then you should have that moment where you're like that cop is like, are we the baddies? Yeah, you actually become the bad guy when you are persuaded by this magic spell, this word spell that has tricked you into thinking that pursuing noble higher ideals without specifying exactly what those are or how they are higher. No one actually does the work. Very few people, I should say, in figuring out the justifications for these principles. And They just sort of assume that they're there because they sound noble, and they're attracted to that because they're disgusted by what they're seeing presently, which is very justifiable. But how did things get the way they are? There's actually a very interesting debate between Steven Crowder and Nick Fuentes that I have to go back and do a office hours video for, that was arguing this exact point. Fuentes was arguing for a sort of absolute split to the point of voting Democrat. And Steven Crowder was saying, well, the other side didn't get to where they were through absolute like clean cuts. They got there incrementally. Everything happens incrementally. If you take incrementalism off the table, you're just ceding power, and in an asymmetric manner, and it's just a sad way to look at the world. It's a sad way to be, basically.
Well, and it's also they're waiting for. This leads to there's the secret kings. The secret kings are waiting for the king under the mountain, which is another myth. That's something from folklore. I switched mics, so I don't know if that'll help her. But
yes, Stefania, we're aware.
We'll get to that in a second. But
we're aware.
It becomes the king under the mountain thing where they're waiting for someone to show up and save them. And if it's not good enough, and if the person shows up and then they do one thing wrong, he's not the guy. You know, and we've seen this happen. Like someone was the guy. Oh, no, I don't like this one thing he did. Now he's not the guy. And then they sabotage. They sabotage things instead of like being like, well, this is actually quite a bit better than what we had. Then we had we're moving in the right direction. Then they sabotage it because they're waiting for the king under the mountain, the mythical king that's going, the King Arthur or whatever, who's sleeping there waiting to rise up. And I had a guy who I think was very smart one time say like I think he was riffing off something Napoleon said once, was like someone's going to come along and say I found the Constitution in a gutter. And like pick it up and like run with it. I'm like, well, where is that man's army going to come from? You know, like there's all these practical concerns that these kind of guys were like, well, we have to wait for the big thing to happen. Like, are you going to do it? Do you have millions of dollars? Because all the guys that ran the American Revolution were actually rich. You know, like they are property men with like whatever. I mean, these things have to be done. You need billionaires involved in this game. Now, if you're going to do that, and so like I'm like, I feel like after 2020, we know that the people are not going to rise up just because things get inconvenient, because they got real inconvenient. So like it's going to take a lot more than that, and so like accelerationism is just really ceding power and saying yes, I would like to be a slave, or you can do what the left did, and this is what I said in my piece, and you can slowly replace all the people that they replaced, because they basically went through the institutions, the judges, the professors, all these things, and replaced everyone who was there over decades, one by one, step by step by step. And now, I went to court. Oh, well, it's a communist who's running the court. Oh, yeah. And so people think one guy's going to come in and change all that. Well, the whole institution is there. The only way to change that is to change it one by one. And so it's to work in your own time to do things that are important. But there's no Bruce Wayne's, and if we had Bruce Wayne's, I'm like, they still wouldn't be. They would be like, Bruce Wayne, he did this thing that I don't like, and so he's not the real Batman. You know, like it would just be another thing. He
didn't resist AIPAC hard enough.
Seriously, it would 100% be that. he had dinner with Baby. And then like, oh, he's not the real Batman. He must be in league with the Joker. He's a plant. But as far as the European thing, just to hit on that, because he's given us some good comments here, we're aware of that. But the point I would make is that Europe is actually not being ruined by migrants. It's being ruined by its European rulers who allowed all of that thing to happen, who threw you onto the bus. Incidentally, a lot of them are of the old noble classes. Like people, like they have the bloodlines of the people that Evola, someone like Evola would have like been like, oh, those are the old noble bloodlines. Or many people on the right anyway would say that. And like these people who are in office, said let the migrants in. I mean, they can't, and so what do? Well, you work against immigration.
Well, can I comment
and you
on
fix that?
Can I comment on Europe for a second? Because
Sure.
the European civilization being destroyed is such a great example of this, where Europe, this question, what do you do? Aristocracy comes to mind. Because I was thinking about other examples of this. There have been all
Right.
kinds of people who have advanced men among the ruin type positions, whether they whether they have read Evola or not. There's like JF Garipe was advising people to vote for Biden because Trump was not better enough. And we need to like send a message and whatever. Peter Hitchens, though, was one of the least edgy examples, who was saying we need to reject the conservative party because they're not like, and he had some reasoning behind it. And he was, this is actually relevant in the news today, because one of the things that Peter Hitchens did is he got into a huge tiff with Carl Benjamin, better known as Sargon of Akkad. Well, just today, Carl Benjamin gave a speech in London, if I'm not mistaken, or somewhere else, to something like 10,000 people. Because the new conservative party, not the cucked one, but the new one that's actually doing something, just swept England very successfully in the last couple weeks. And this was led by not an aristocrat, but a guy who said, a YouTuber who said, hey, I think we should do something. And so he started to do things. He created a media company. He started speaking. He ran for office. And now he's not a member. He's just a commentator, but he is basically responsible for the success of this. I would argue it's not the sole person. Obviously there are other people as well, as Tommy Robinson and many others, but like, things are changing. Trajectories are never straight lines. They are stock market charts that go up and down, and you don't actually know when the next trough and the next peak are going to be, but it's never going up forever, and it's never going down forever. And like the juxtaposition between Peter Hitchens advancing the accelerationist, sabotage your own side to send a message or something, and its complete lack of success, versus Carl Benjamin's optimism and willingness to just do work to improve things and to improve himself. He's lost a tremendous amount of weight. And I think there's a spiritual, if we were to borrow Evolian language, connection between the positivity of not giving up hope and not rejecting incrementalism because it's like not going to be enough or whatever, and the effect it has on the individual at not just the spiritual level, but the physical level as well. And I think it's, I don't want to, positively cite Christians too much as Christians, because that's not what we're here to do. But Vox Day himself, when talking about not on the subject of secret kings and gammas, but when asked about the decline of Christianity in Europe, his retort is, all we need is 12. Which is like, that's a Christian myth number reference, but it's the kind of energy that is antithetical to the doomerism that comes with this all or nothing mentality, that I think is pervasive, and it sets up, and so much of the idea that we're all going to violently rise up is its own kind of escapism, because they know that doing the political ground game, that changing minds, that having conversations, is a lot of hard work. So if you think, well, nothing's going to happen until bodies start dropping, like that's actually evasiveness. That's actually an excuse to not do what has to be done.
It's just saying words that sound tough. That's what it sounds like. It's like
secret alpha language.
Yeah, exactly. It's like boomer dad language,
divorced dad language.
Yeah, divorced dad language. It's become divorced dad language. Like don't mistake my kindness for weakness, or drinking from the skulls of your enemies on the menu. Like shit like that, like stupid fucking meme garbage. that like makes you sound tough. Like, have you been drinking from skulls lately? Have you done that? Like, let's just live in the real world here for 5 minutes, and like, okay, well, what are the concrete steps? That's what I talk about a lot of. That's what I talk about with a lot of things. So I got stuck in the comments for a second.
Sorry. Whenever it brings up the last 3 people I've talked to about Europa, the last battle, I always wind up in arguments about whether wooden doors preclude the effectiveness of gas. Because I've personally gassed rodents before, and there were no airtight containers. But it's a digression, not relevant here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think I guess Brock there is talking about not Brock Say, but Carl Benjamin, maybe when he's Sargon of Akkad. I mean, did he get? I'm not sure if that's who he means, but
yeah,
that could be the case. But yeah,
very possibly.
Yeah, it's. Yeah, I'm mad that I lost my point there. When I was on one about this because this makes me mad. You know, like it's this when I hear Evola mentioned up as the Nazi would say, I reach for my gun. In boomer tough guy language, in Nazi tough guy language.
That's what we were talking about.
Yeah,
boomer t-shirts.
Yeah, exactly, boomer t-shirts, and it's like, I was going to talk about the flowchart. This is what I always say with these kind of things. What do you want to have happen? Okay, well, how do we get there? And if there's no way to if you can't make a flow chart of how we get there, like a reasonable flow chart of like how we get from point A to point B, I stop listening to your plan because like, like people like we should have, like Evola wanted to like return to like a sacred kingship. Okay, well, that's nice. I like that idea. That's cool. Show me the flow chart. Tell me the flow chart. What's your plan? How do we get from huge democratic society with a totally mixed population that relies on totally different values? Where is the political will for that? Where's the money? How do we get there? All the actual concerns that get you from point A to point B. Because that's what, I mean, if you were Caesar, that's what you would do. If you were Alexander the Great, that's what you would do. Okay, well, what can I actually accomplish and get there? They always say politics is the art of the possible. And and so when people have these grand visions of what they want to do or they want to see happen, or like what ideal political system would be perfect for me and none of the other ones would be acceptable, then show me the flowchart. How do you get there? You know, and that's if you, all these people with these grand ideas, I feel like
I'm sure Evola would say there is no path. Like, this is what I want to happen. There's no path to get there. So fuck it all. And we should throw gasoline on the fire to burn it all down until we get the thing I want. And what's
assuming that it's down there under the fire.
Right. Well, where this goes from being kind of just sad and lame to a real recipe for pathology is that the logic and the mode of argumentation doesn't stop with politics. I was talking with one of my wife's friends 3 or 4 years ago, and there's this question I love to ask people whenever I'm having a conversation about politics and I don't know where the other person stands. I like to kind of start here as a starting point before we go any further. Like, suppose you got everything you wanted politically, what would you then do? What would be your ideal? And people say, oh, I want to like own a homestead and start a llama garden or whatever. And the follow-up question is, of course, is like, okay, could you do that now? And the answer is almost always yes, right? It's almost always, it is almost never politics getting in the way of people pursuing their dreams, but they become persuaded that there are political impositions. There are problems that only politics can resolve that are stopping them and preventing them from pursuing their aspirations. And this woman I was talking to said, well, she wanted to plant her own like food and grow her own food. That was her aspiration. She was a vegetarian, of course. So she wanted to grow her own food. I was like, well, can't we do that? And she's like, yeah, but they're like poisoning the ground. So like there's no political
Who? It's the
solution.
Jews. The Jews are poisoning.
Well, so she was on the other side of it, so it was actually capitalism. But if you're on the other side, then it's the Jews instead of capitalism. So
Right,
it
right.
depends on which side of the line, who's the evil person. But like it's always an evil there's always an evil person preventing you from doing the thing. Now, is that actually a realistic fear? No. Like millions of people grow plants all across the country that are not, and like, are there poisons in the ground? The danger's in the dosage, right? You know,
What are you eating now?
your potatoes are nightshades. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So anyways, like it is possible to do these things. Now you might need to make some steps to go do it. You might need to figure out how to like make a little bit of money and maybe like not get a college degree in something that gives you more debt than income and also bad ideas. Things like that. But like most of these dreams are eminently achievable, but they become persuaded, one, that there is no political solutions to their problems, whether you're a Marxist or an Evolian traditionalist. It's a very similar dialectic way of thinking. And we need to accelerate the contradictions to get to what is impossible for justice or freedom. Two, you can't, there's no political solution. And two, you can't actually pursue your personal desires until politics is fixed. And it's a real recipe for a freaking whirlpool of anxiety and mental. Right.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
That. Yeah.
So like that, the logic of, I guess the dialectical logic of accelerationism is bad all around, and it's bad at the personal level, and it's bad at the political organizational level, relative to that freaking comment. And it's like when we look to like I guess the right-wing example of this is like, we all want to start a compound, but we know what they'll do to you. And they, show pictures of Ruby Ridge and Waco and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, how many stories of that happening have you not heard about because there wasn't an ATF rate?
Yeah.
Thousands. There are actually thousands of those that are working that didn't run into random unlucky circumstances and such.
There are a lot of people with guns and houses. Houses with like friends next to them. It's there are tons of them. Tiny right wing guys.
But one point of failure disproves the possibility. So to bring this back to the individual level, because I think like the most fun way to refute communists is post-physique, right? We can chuckle and enjoy Slavoj Žižek, but no one wants to be Slavoj Žižek, right? Now, there are exceptions. There are jacked socialist, skinhead types, who are like box and do stuff. That's not the rule. That's not the trajectory. That's not the direction that ideology takes you. And in the same way, the association and the trajectory of Evolian defeatism / accelerationism is not towards individual health and positivity and success in your life, but into this kind of withdrawn, nerdy, brooding, almost like a delayed goth phase for 30-year-old guys. And it's not a good look, and it's not a good life outcome.
Yeah, and that's also a reason why it's appealing to really young men, because they don't have, a lot of times they're single, they don't have a lot of things yet. It's like, do you know what a civil war looks like, son? Because do you want to shoot your dogs? Do you want to shoot your dogs and watch your family die? Because that's on the table. That's what civil wars look like. So accelerationism sounds a lot more fun when you don't have anything to live for. And so but the Evolian would say that that's all bourgeois concerns.
Well, and they would also say, well, we don't have girlfriends because they've been denied to us by the unjust system.
We can only have girlfriends after the revolution. Only when we can only have girlfriends. I wanted to. This comment can just keep going on. Like
just keep it up.
I wanted to. Yeah, just leave it up. I wanted to make a Tinder profile, but I have to wait until after the revolution. I wanted to ask a girl on the date, but I had to wait until after the resolution.
I need to wait for the ruins to come back. I need to wait under the mountain.
Yeah. It just goes on and on and on, and then it just becomes an excuse for things. And like I said, one of the reasons it bothers me is because it creates this mentality where people have to poison the well all the time. It's like I guess without getting too deeply into the political stuff, because I don't like I said, I don't go on X every day or anymore or whatever. And for the recent outrage, I'm not really up to date on what people are talking about. But it's like okay, we're back to the world of two genders. I like that. That was a big step because that was not a thing for a few years there. You get in a lot of trouble. There's baby steps in the right direction. You can't fix the whole world. You can't fix a world that was ruined in 40 years in two. And you can't just wait for one person to do it either, because you have to like you said, as people have found out, there are all these judges, activist judges, and all these things that are fucking things up all around. All of those people need to be replaced one by one by better people, and that means, like I said, a lot of work. And and that's what men have to wrap it up into solar idealism, and also to what I said in that essay. If anyone wants to go read it, like I said, it's pinned there. This is what men have always done. Is that I see? Okay, well, I see something. Good. I'm glad we made our point. But
lift and get girls.
Yeah.
Read old books.
Yeah. Don't wait for the revolution. Don't wait for the age of tradition. It's probably not coming. Yeah. But the thing is, we need to. It's always been the task of men to create order in the midst of chaos. And the idea that everything was in perfect order is nonsense. That has never been the case. When we talk about what's good in the Aristotelian sense or whatever, it's always a balance. And things are always being pushed this way and pushed that way, whatever. And there's always it's about maintaining this balance of the best, the best thing. And so there's always going to be change. There's always going to be flux. There's always going to be good. It's getting a little bit worse or it's getting a little bit better. And your job is to keep pushing it toward the better. I mean, that's all you can do. Thank you. I'm glad. You like our perspective. Like I said in the essay, make it 1% better. And there's a scope of concern. There's a scope of concern problem with a lot of these things too. It's like we are better. The essay, because it made me laugh. I'm like, we are a little better than peasants. Why are we concerned with the grand arc of history of 1,000, 3,000 years of history or whatever? Men were not meant to know these things. Men were not to be concerned with the grand arc. I mean, it's a cool thing to talk about, whatever. It's it's a fun conversation, but you do not need to be concerned with in Western civilization. I mean, that's kind of a so story. It's kind of a myth. It's actually a whole bunch of different things that are connected, but that have some things that are not connected. There's all kinds of broken little pieces there. So
there was a meme I saw. I keep seeing actually of there's a guy standing in his kitchen, and it was the label is Sisyphus carrying the rock up the hill, and the Sisyphus is the Evolian aristocrat of the soul staring upon a doomed civilization, and the rock on the back of his shoulder is the fucking dishes. Like
There was a variation on that before.
Yeah.
It's like, it's, and I respond to that kind of thing because I am that guy. And also, like, people who are interested in artistic ideas, big ideas. That was the joke when I was growing up. I was such a fucking brat. My dad was always trying to get me to mow the lawn. And I was like, I'm doing things, important things. Like I've always been this person. So, like, I understand what it is to feel that way. But at the same time, I mean, like, we are, like I said, no better than peasants. And it's been our job to create things to affect the world within our sphere. And you grow your sphere, you have more influence, and that's good. But the grand scope of history, a little bit too far. Like, you don't need to be. If this is what's concerned you, and this is, I think it's because of online things very much as well. Like, people get wrapped up in this, like, but the West is dying. Go pick the radishes. Like, get back.
Are you dying?
Like,
are you?
That's not your concern. I mean, that's it's like, that's a bigger thing than is your concern. And if there's only so much you can do about that.
Yeah.
And so again, that's just a frame. Like, or is it just changing? I mean, there was this whole thing called the Black Plague. Like, there's all kinds of, like, ups and downs the West has had. Like, there's all kinds of things. Like, I mean, the whole war with the Ottomans and all kinds of things. So I think it's good to have perspective and worry more about your own life and the things that you can help and the things you can change. And help the city council do the one good thing, or the school board do the one good thing, or whatever. And don't like stay up nights worrying about the death of the West or the because it's just not productive. It's not a productive use of your very short time that is left.
And on that point, regarding the last comment from Stefano about he doesn't know what to think about Europa, the last battle. Is it true? This is where I love to apply the Scott Adams filter, which is, first of all, there are no cases where the official story of a historical event is actually accurate. At least where there are political interests involved. A corollary, the opposite view is also incorrect. So if someone is just advancing a reactionary oppositional view, that's probably, just as a heuristic, probably not true. And the official story is also probably not true. But suppose it is true. Suppose everything stated in Europa, the last battle, is true. What do you now do? Not based on, like, the particular mission of that documentary, because it has a very particular goal, right? It has a particular narrative it is trying to push. And from the conversations I've had with the people who've watched it, and I haven't seen the whole thing, I need to at some point, but from the bits I've seen, like, it uses an amalgamation of true parts, but also some omissions, to push a very particular narrative that is driven by interest and not what we might call disinterested historical curiosity. So what do you do in your own life if you assume it is all true? I think again, we're faced with the same problems. Nothing changes in the problems that are before us exactly. Some of our understandings of it might shift a little bit. We might learn about some strategies to deal with particular problems you think we still have that didn't work historically. But there's still the fucking dishes. We're still paying the rent, and the amount of effort people go to change society so that they have a lower rent. Like, if they had put half that effort into, like, making a little bit more money, they would be, like, millionaires. Right. They're so hardworking out of so much laziness. And I'm not trying to say it's all about money, because Backward Mule says, create wealth for your own. Like, yeah, it's good to be wealthy. There's also good things that aren't just wealth. You know, there are valuable, worthwhile things to do in art, in relationships, in experiences that aren't just about wealth. Wealth is this fungible placeholder for value. But yeah, I mean, to that end, regardless of how you get there, it's probably good to unburden yourself from collective guilt regardless. Whether you're like, regardless of your background, Germans and non-Germans, whether you're white or Jewish or Japanese, and people are like, oh, the rape of Nanking. You're like, that wasn't fucking me. Yeah. It's like we can be mindful of, you know, our history and the possibilities of things that can happen. In fact, we should be informed by that. We should be informed of how bad things can be. But if we look back at the worst things in history, they are often preceded by absolutist, you're either with us or against us kinds of thinking, and a rejection of incrementalism. I think incrementalism is really not just the path to success in most cases, whether you're working out at the gym or trying to learn a language or trying to get more money or trying to get the girl or whatever, or win in politics. That's what Charlie Kirk was doing. But it's also the way to avoid catastrophe. Like, catastrophe is caused largely by binary thinking that overlooks complexities in the variety of factors that play into a given context. So it's not worth going nuts over. Very few things are, unless you're a squirrel. I am a dad. I can't stop.
I was like, you are not actually known for making dad jokes very often, though. Like, I make more of them, but yeah, that was the first thing I thought. I'm like, that is a legit dad joke. But insert the Fozzie the Bear fucking
yeah. And regarding backwards mule, nepotism, monopolies, and funding elections, that's where we insert the astronaut with the gun meme. I think. Yeah.
Exactly. Always has been. Yeah. For sure.
If we assume that everything always has been more or less as it is now, that politics is always sociopathic by nature, even if a given politician isn't a sociopath, and that there's always going to be corruption, as well as beautiful acts of generosity and courage and virtue and excellence, and we're never going to bring about a final solution, because, as Alexander Solzhenitsyn said, the line between good and evil, between excellence and sullen mopey Gothism, cut the line between that cuts through the heart of every man. So like, the solar approach, I think, is not the Evolian retreat. It's not going Galt, to borrow from Ayn Rand. It's to try to reflect a little bit of the good stuff.
Yes, absolutely. But yeah, yes, if that's why I like that book about human universals so much. It's disappointing that it's kind of suggests that oligarchy is kind of is common. It's oligarchy all the way down. You know, like, some powerful people get together and run some stuff. Oh yeah, that's kind of always been happening.
Although I do have a question about that, because, like, oligarchy is like rule by wealth, right? But there is a sort of David Foster Wallace dynamic where, suppose a man has a certain quality that you and I don't recognize, but other wealthy people do. And he becomes extraordinarily wealthy because he's very valuable and he provides real value to a lot of people. But to us, it looks like he's powerful because he's wealthy. in the historical analysis of the most common kinds of government are actual aristocracies in the Platonic sense, the rule by the best, or the rule by the timocratic, the rule by the most honorable. Might some of those be classified as oligarchy just because the recognition of their quality isn't caught by the sort of low resolution retrospective analysis of a history book written by someone else?
3 out of 4 aristocrats agree. Why, yes. I'm glad that you noticed. I'm glad that you noticed. I'm not just rich, I'm also valuable.
You should, aristocrats, you should hire me. I'll work for you. Not really.
I mean, but no, that's true. I mean, okay, well, how do you get a lot of money? I mean, but yes, by doing bad things sometimes, whatever. But
well,
like all these guys, when I
Backward Mule says, this is probably a big part of it, actually.
Yeah. Oh, that. Yeah, for sure. There's nepotism and all that kind of stuff involved, but also like, okay, like who's building developments around?
Who's catching rockets with chopsticks?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a really good example of
talk about a golden age.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyways.
Yeah, like wealth creation, like value. I mean, that dude creates value. For a lot of people. I use a lot of his stuff. A lot of people, we have got members who use Starlink. We have all kinds of things. He's creating value all around the world.
I've installed a bunch of his car chargers.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of examples like that aren't as glamorous or aren't like the richest man in the world. But there's all kinds of mid-level wealth that it's like, oh, he owns a chain of like windshield repair shops or whatever. Like there's all kinds of things where like they're actually providing a lot of value, and maybe the regular guy, maybe the guy who installs the windshield doesn't know how to run 15 successful windshield shops, like that. Yeah. And so there's something happened there and that's who ends up running things is people who know how to run things.
And even like that's putting the material stuff aside, we're still within the living generation that gave us the Lord of the Rings. And we are the generation that received the film adaptation. We're going to be seeing, I predict, a lot more complaints, and like literally within like 24 hours of you expressing the sentiment, the tiredness of the complaints about the Odyssey has finally hit me too.
Good. I'm glad you reached it.
Yeah, I'll go back to going through Emily Wilson and line by line, like dealing with that stuff. That's fun. But like the complaints about the Odyssey movie, it's just like, it looks just lame. It looks just not worth seeing. But I probably will be going back and rewatching the Lord of the Rings extended series again with my wife, because we do that sometimes, and it's fantastic. Is it as good as the books? No, the purists will have their complaints. I'm sure Christopher Tolkien had his complaints, but it was trying to do, and arguably succeeded in doing, everything that people wanted Christopher Nolan to do with the Odyssey, and he didn't do. Yes, some people didn't do it, but some people do. And we used to talk about this as glass half full versus glass half empty. It's like, would you rather hate watch the Odyssey, or would you rather go back and rewatch the Lord of the Rings series? And I feel like Evola is maybe slightly more attractive to the people who would hate watch the Odyssey than re-enjoy the Lord of the Rings, because as much as Lord of the Rings sort of fits into the Evolian romanticization of the past that came to us from the 1950s and 60s, like I think it was 60.
Yeah, it was only made.
It was like very recent. This was, and it was a creation. This is not about the distant past. It's and Tolkien himself was very explicit about this. It's an alternative universe that is here. It's not different from the present. It's not going back in time in our world. It's an alternative version of our world in the present, essentially. And it's and that's a creation of our age. It's a creation of our time. What a great creation to enjoy and look at and delve into. The languages, the maps, the history, the symbolism buried in there. And who's going to be who's going to be the James Joyce that's going to try to chase that rabbit, the way he did with the way Joyce did with Homer. Not a recommended reading, but
yeah, I mean, and there's so many things like that. I mean, Dune is another thing that was like, I mean, that was a recently written thing that became this very big. This other thing is having its own little renaissance right now. Like I'm a huge Man of Steel fan. In the essay when I was writing about this, that didn't make it into the final cut, but I was like I was trying to think of great things that were cool that were made in the past like 50 years. And I didn't put it in, but I was like, why Conan the Barbarian was made within our lifetimes, but I mean, like, people still do good things. And I think that if you don't believe that they can, you won't, but you won't find them.
And people lose track of the past setting that, like, Homer was compiling the Iliad and the Odyssey in the 9th or perhaps 8th century BC. The events of the Trojan War happened in the 12th century. Those 300 to 400 years prior, or in the distant past, they were writing about the distant past. So
I mean, he was probably, I mean, technically, wasn't he in a dark age? Was it Kali Yuga? I mean, technically it was Kali Yuga then too, but there was, this was all written in like some fallen age that was after that. But then after that fallen age, we get ancient Athens. We get the classical age,
which was its own kind of shit show, with a few silver linings.
I mean, because it's not the pretty white buildings, they were having fucking revolutions and fucking wars all the time. So there was all kinds of bullshit going on. They probably showed, they were probably pissed off about it. Well, they were. We know it. They made Socrates kill himself. Talking shit. Anyway, we could go on and on about that, but we should wrap up right now. But this has been a good little back and forth here. I think this is one of our better ones so far. And I love the audience participation. We're getting more of it and giving us some
well, it's especially cool to see people come away with a different sense and with an understanding of, like, and again, we're not saying never read Evola, but like, because he does have some great stuff. I mean, especially the mountain climbing one. Yeah. But like, you should be mindful of like where do these philosophies take you? What is the effect here, and what kind of person do you want to be? And do the philosophies of these books take you there? I would also encourage people to go read Marx's contribution to the critique of Hegel's philosophy of right. Don't become a Marxist. It is a bad thing. It is a bad idea.
It's gay.
Yes. It's atrocious.
Yes. Yeah. No one likes that. Don't do it. But yes, and hell Paul. Yeah.
Excellent.
I'll take it. Yeah. Good. But anyway, we're gonna sign off now. But we are obviously both members of the Order of Fire. We do have an event coming up in Georgia pretty soon. New store. You're becoming new store to me now in my head. But CB is not. I mean, he's not going to be there. But I will be at our event in Georgia. But you have to be a member to come. And so if you think you're a solar idealist, if you've read our stuff and you like what we're doing and you want to participate in creating something instead of dooming about everything, because that's what we're trying to do. Like, well, what we don't like our options, let's create something better. The next live stream is same bat time, same bat channel. It's just the next Sunday at 7:30. We're going to do this every week, so we'll just keep doing that. I don't know what our subject is yet. If people have subjects, they can put it in the comments, and I will read them, and we will determine what our next show is and advertise that. And maybe I will make a fancy trailer, maybe I won't.
We got an Apollonian comment. Should we go back to Nietzsche's Birth of Tragedy? That would be a good one to review. It feels like people have used Apollonian and Dionysian without even Camille Paglia, let alone the man himself. Might be a fun one.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Or something else.
But
could a criminal someone has been reading Bronze Age Pervert. Could a criminal enterprise, that would be better, yes.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it would be better than doing nothing. Ask Sean Ryan.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, but I mean, I wouldn't really advise it. It seems like, I feel like if you have a criminal mind,
this is not financial advice.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like if you have a criminal mind, being criminal is for you.
You're probably not watching.
I'm bad at even lying, so I would just fuck it up. So like I'm better to not like try to get into that. I know myself enough well that I'd fuck up the lie too quick. But you know, if you're a con artist and you're good at that, then maybe I don't want to hang out with you either. So there's that. But anyway, thanks guys for joining us, and we will be back next week. Until then, stay solar.
Stay solar.